Okay, in this video, we are going to add oil pastel to our big raven drawing. So I'm first going to start with the raven itself. So the first area I'm going to start with, and I'm using water-soluble oil pastels. So we're going to use a blue-violet. And I'm first going to start with the back side of this wing. And so the oil pastels by themselves may not fill in all of these small gaps, but if you use one of your blending stumps, if you go over this area, it will help fill in these small white gaps that are left in the paper. Now, if you don't get all of them, not a big deal, because we can also use the plain water on a brush to fill those in, or go over it with watercolor. So for the other area I'm going to start, it's going to be underneath the body of the bird. So I'm going to use this light gray. So just putting a little bit of this down, a little under here. Again, not pressing very hard. And next I'm going to use what's called the moss green. So I'm just going to go over that light gray area a little bit. And then I'm going to use a little bit of that blue violet just on the lower portion. And we'll blend this. And so I'm using the exact same oil pastel or blending stump that I used before when I added my color to the back side of the wing. And so whenever you apply these oil pastels, remember you want to help shape and form the object you are adding color to. And when you use the blending stump, you want to go in the same direction that you're using the oil pastel. So you want to follow those lines that you had marked. Now I'm also going to use this blue violet, and I'm going to go ahead and outline the entire bird. And so to get these thinner lines, you can A, not press as hard, but B, you can also sharpen these simply by taking a scrap piece of paper and then just kind of pressing hard on one side, and it'll help get a little bit more of a point to it. So here I was spinning it and I get a little more of a point. Makes it a little easier to get these smaller lines, especially like with this mouth line. And then just the overall outline. Now, I'm also going to add some of the moss green and a little bit of that light gray on this part of the wing. So I'm just following the outline so I know the direction in which to place these oil pastel marks. And then I'm going to add a little bit more of the moss green right here. And then some of the light gray right there. So we'll blend this in. So as you're working on this, you want to make sure that you're not just using one color. We want to make this more interesting, and we want to have a very painterly effect, meaning we're just going to layer different colors together. So I can even use this blending stump, and you can see it's been used quite a bit. I can even go over my outlines to smooth those out. But what I also will do is kind of blend part of that outline to the underneath part of the wing, which you can see some of that color in the original image, where it has kind of a darker blue underside. Now, I didn't get as much of like a darker blue or with the blue violet right here, so I can just lightly go over this. And then I can just reblend it. And as long as you're blending so you get color in most of the areas, again, like these small white gaps, I wouldn't worry about it. But I wouldn't leave any large sections without oil pastel. So make sure you're adding value all throughout. And so when you're blending the oil pastel, it's kind of like tonal shading with regular pencil. You know, if you go in a circular motion as you go in the direction that you need to, that helps break up those areas too. Add a little bit of yellow green right in here. So right at the top of the wing, give it a little bit more of a highlight. So for the top part of the head, I'm just going to lightly go over it with a yellow green. And I'm even going to put a little bit inside the eye. I'm going to take just a touch of yellow, put it in front of the eye, and we'll blend this. And then the under part of the beak, we want this to be a little bit darker. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use a little bit of this light gray. And I'm going to blend that first. I'm going to try and blend some of the outline with it so it adds a little bit more of a shade to it. And then using some of this blue violet, I'm just going to make these kind of thin lines just underneath. And then I'm just going to go over those just to kind of smooth them into the rest of the body of the bird. So I still have a little bit of area here I can probably blend. So I'm just going to use whatever oil pastels left on my blending stump and just go over that. Just touch up a few other spots. So I forgot to outline kind of this front part of the body of the bird. So I'll do that and then just go over it to smooth it out. All right, so now we're going to look at the base that the bird is on. And for this, I'm just going to start off using my light gray. So just going over it fairly light, a little bit of an outline. So notice with this, we don't have a base or a line that marks the base. And I'm going to do a little bit over here. And for this remaining white space, I'm going to go over this with some yellow orange. And I'll do a little bit on the other side. So now let's blend this real quick. Okay, so we're just going to blend this real fast. And then you have another color that you can use, which is this slate gray. We're going to use this to create a darker shadowed outline area. So I'm just going to put a bit of an outline right here. And an underside, and one right there. And just using my blending stump, I'm going to blend that in. And just a little bit under here. All right, there we go. So we're done with the base now. Okay, so now we are going to look at the mountain. So you're going to need three colors. You're going to need a light blue, or in this case, this is called true blue. You're going to want the color called cerulean. So it looks like a really, really dark blue, but it's actually more of a blue-green. And you're going to want a regular blue. So I'm going to start off just using a regular blue. And I'm just going to go ahead and outline the mountain. And don't forget the little sliver right here. And we'll just go ahead and fill that in. And then with the regular blue, I'm just going to create some curving lines right here. We'll do a little bit down this way, a little bit at the bottom. So notice the direction I'm putting these marks. All right, so that's it for the regular blue. So now I'm going to go in with the cerulean. And so you'll see where there's more of a teal type color to it. It has more green. A little bit at the top. A little bit over here. And then for the rest of this, I'm just going to fill it in with some of this light blue or the true blue. So with these oil pastels, you can really kind of smear and run them together, and it will simulate an oil painting or get pretty close to it. All right, so got that. So now I'm going to do my blending. So I'm just going to go along, kind of blend that outline first. Then when I blend the rest of this, I really want to follow the direction of my oil pastels and how I set those down. All right, so the mountain is finished. So we're now going to look at the other stone on the other side and these trees. So the stone, just going to set down a little bit of this gray. And then I'm going to use what is labeled slate gray. So it's that kind of blue gray color. Give it a little bit of an outline. Let me go ahead and just add slate gray to the little rock on top. And we'll blend this. Let me go over this edge one more time. Give it a little more definition. And then for the three trees that are back here, I'm going to use my green. I'm also going to use my cerulean. And maybe a little bit of this moss green. On this tree, I'm really just using my moss and regular green. So because this area is so small, I'm just kind of like scribbling one on top of the other. And we'll blend that. For the other two trees, we'll do a little bit of the cerulean. And put some touches of moss green in here. And for the rest of it, we'll just fill it in with that regular green. Blend this. And we'll just stop right there. So for the area over here, we're going to jump back on the other side. When I do this part, I'm just going to use these diagonal hatch lines. So I now have my moss green. And then I'm going to use my regular green just to kind of go over parts of this. And then I'm going to use my light gray. And then we'll blend this. So again, we want to go in the same direction that we set these colors down. So I'm really just using diagonal blending. Oh, got a little bit of blue over here, but that's okay. And then there are some kind of small faint marks of flowers. So if you use a red orange, I'm just going to do a few stippling marks. And that's it. So I'm not going to blend those. Now underneath, we have some color changes. So I'm going to use yellow green just in this one kind of area. Then I'll go over that with my moss green. Blend that. And then I'm going to go back to my slate gray, and there's kind of like this swooping line over here. Just sketch that in. And I'm going to go ahead and just kind of outline that mark. And do kind of just a zigzagging mark right there. So for this other little area that's over here, I'm just going to use my light gray. And then I'm going to blend this area into that light gray area I just set down. Then we're going to use the light gray again, like right here. So kind of on the other side of that swooping line. If I go back to my slate gray, I'm just going to bring that line back a little bit. So that way there's that contrast. So underneath here, I'm going to use my regular green right here, just keeping my hatching lines that are diagonal. I'm going to use my moss green right in here. I want to leave a little bit of a strip. And this is where I'm going to use my red orange again. So this time I'm just using it to kind of fill in this streak right there. And then if I go on top of it with a light brown, or in this case, a golden brown, it'll tone it down just a little. And then this remaining area underneath that kind of orange, red orange streak, I'm going to use my moss green, and we'll blend this. And if some of these colors start to like merge and blend together, that's okay. Again, it'll help create that painterly type effect. And then for the rest of this area underneath, I'm going to go, so I'm kind of changing my direction. I'm curving them that way. And where I have those rocks, I'm just going to skip around those. And then I'm going to do a light gray on top. Again, I'm not pressing very hard. And then when I use my blending stump, I want to follow those curving diagonal lines that go the other way now. And then for the rocks themselves, I'm going to use my red orange over those. And then with my slate gray, I'm just going to give kind of a dark side to these. And I'll blend these together just a little. Then going back to my slate gray, last thing I'm going to do over here, get this kind of outline back. And not really pressing too hard. And then there's kind of a collection of what looks like darker plants right in here. We'll just kind of scribble some lines in here. So I'm going to stick with my slate gray. I'm now going to outline this curving line. And where I'm going to go next, I'm going to use just my light blue. And then I'll grab my regular blue and probably some moss green again. So I'll come back to the small section with my slate gray in a second. So with my slate gray, I'm just going to go over this area a little bit. Go over it with my light gray. And with my regular blue, we're going to go over some areas of this. And then with the moss green, a little bit right here. More up there. Do a little right here too. Then we'll blend those areas. And there are some red orange flowers up around in this area too. So we'll add some of that as soon as I get this blended. So if I use my red orange. Go back to our light blue, kind of finish this section. Get our regular blue. And we'll just fill in the rest with our moss green, or this kind of grayish green color. Get this blended. And there's some of these red orange flowers up top. So definitely quite a few more here. So I'm just pressing a little harder, packing in some of these stippling marks. And then from the underside, mostly moss green and regular green. So I'm going to do a couple different things here. I'm going to curve these a bit more. I'm going to carry these over here. Then with my yellow green, I'll go over this side. And then with my regular green, I'm now going to change my direction and go this way. So you can probably see how the lines and hatching motions change in the original artwork. And I want some of those lines to stand back out. So I'm just going to touch some of these up a little. Then underneath, we're going to have some light blue. And I'm going to do gray under that. And then I'm going to use this light brown. So blend these together. And then for this last section, we're just going to do light blue, light gray, and then blend. So in the next video, we'll talk about how to apply the watercolors. So this will pretty much be it for most of the pastel work. We'll do a little bit of pastel work in the sky. But for right now, that is it for this video.